Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and this is a show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of experts. And joining me today is John Howard, developer, mentor, author and investor. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
Good to have you back. And for the first time joining John is Dave Forde, chartered construction manager and consultant to the construction industry. David, welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Good. Well, glad to have you both, and we'll get straight on with the question. And John, your first question is this. As a small developer, I wonder if the panel feel that the government's levelling up agenda should encourage developers to look further afield when considering potential projects. Historically, smaller developers have stayed closer to their home. I wonder what the panel's view is of spreading the net wider into perhaps Scotland and Wales.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I'm considered a small developer. Anybody that develops less than 250 properties a year, roughly, is considered a small developer. So I've bought all over the UK for the last 40 odd years, and there's others like me, but I do appreciate that many smaller developers, perhaps than me, and larger ones to be fair, will stick to a relatively small area. The great thing about the levelling up, this government have spending £4.8 billion on levelling up. And before you say anything, Stephen, thank God, most of it's outside London. So Morecambe got 11 million, I believe, to sort out their seafront, which is that's the biggest single amount of money spent. The part of levelling up fund is the 25 million that's going to the Towns Fund, and these are for towns across the UK.
I thought it was 20 million.
Up to 25 million for towns around the UK. And there's 110 towns, I think, benefited from it. Mostly Conservative held seats, of course, because we're trying to get the Conservatives back in, the MPs back in the next election. And politics and property is very closely linked, as you know. So my advice to anyone looking to perhaps move out of their comfort zone a little bit, is to look where the money's been spent, especially in the town centres with the town fund. And then on the back of that investment that's being made into those towns, then get in there on the back of it, because you'll see a great improvement in a lot of these town centres.
John, look, do you really think 25 million makes a lot of difference to a town? Because I mean, with government's record of procurement and wasting of money, I just don't see that sort of money going for it. I mean, you told me off last time because I said, well, I know people that live in London here, they've got houses worth more than 20 million.
How hard
quid.
is that, Dave?
I mean,
that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
But, you know, it just sounds to me an incredibly small amount of money, and certainly not an amount of money that's going to change the landscape much in a town. Now, you mentioned Morecambe. I mean, Morecambe I've got a lot of time for. I mean, they're doing the Eden Project and all sorts of things up there. Yep. So they've got a very firm grasp on what they're spending the money on.
And a very good Conservative MP as well. So, but
if you say so.
But what I would say is that 25 million is being spent by the local authorities on schemes within their town. They know what they need to spend the money on, and you may not think it's a large amount of money, but for some of these towns, it's not for cities, it's for towns, remember. It is a godsend. And the great thing is, it gives confidence to other people to invest in that town.
I could go with that. That's what we're
talking about. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. Of course, it's not going as far, Dave, as it was construction. Is it 25 million quid's worth?
No, not these days.
That's the problem. You know, 30% probably rise in costs over the last couple of years or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that this is the problem. Everything is so expensive today. I mean, we're looking down here in Canary Wharf now, you know, the norm is sort of £500 million on building a block of flats, you know. I mean, it's huge, isn't it? And of course, the volatility of the, you know, price of materials and that sort of thing is, you know, it's crucifying some of the developers, isn't it? I think gone are the days when you just assume developers are going to make a lot of money. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think they're still making a few quid, put it like
that.
Hopefully we are. Hopefully.
Under your guidance, of course.
Of course.
Oh, of course.
Right. Okay. So you think you should spread further afield?
I think so, because what it does, let me tell you about 1992. 1992 recession, I had properties and in developments all over the UK. East Anglia dropped 35%. The north dropped 15%. Birmingham props dropped 20%. So if you spread your risk around, and at the moment we've got schemes in Scotland and Wales, we spread around in order to, because every area is different and the levels of drops and increases, of course, are different. So it does spread your risk, and that's quite important, I think.
Okay. And would you recommend the smaller developers to look in Scotland and into Wales?
Well, I don't want them looking in Scotland because we're buying a few things there at the moment. So, but yeah, of course, I think if there are areas of this country that are still doing, very well. It's a micro market. Some areas are struggling, some areas aren't. But certainly the town fund and the levelling up fund as a whole has got to be good for the whole country.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, John. Dave, your first question. What are the most common innovations being used by developers to achieve greener credentials for their projects?
I think that's a bit of a loaded question.
No, you've got 5 minutes, no more.
When you say to improve their credentials, there are a lot of people involved in, let's call it greenwashing. They're just putting the bare minimum in to call themselves an eco developer. But what I'm seeing, the most common things, if we spoke about small developers, self-builders, insulation, obviously, everything, if you want to call it green or eco, nothing's going to work unless the fabric of the building is insulated. So that's the very first thing. And I'm seeing some very interesting products coming out, not like your traditional insulation. I'm seeing things like recycled compressed wood chip, polystyrene, and they're becoming quite popular. They're a bit niche at the moment. They're not widely known, but those who are into eco developing are using those. Then we come to what most people have heard of, the air source heat pumps. To be honest with you, I haven't heard that many good reviews about it. I'm not an expert, but I haven't heard many. The alternatives that are getting good reviews are mechanical vent heat recovery systems or the infrared heating now.
I mean, we had occasion to talk about these heat pumps before, John, haven't we? And there was one example. An elderly lady had been talked into having one of these pumps put in. She had it put in, it was nearly £40,000. They then discovered that her radiators weren't big enough to have the capacity to heat the place, so she had to replace all them. So by the time she'd finished, she'd spent £70,000 or £80,000.
She must have had a mansion, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but she spent this £70,000 or £80,000. Then, on top of it all, her first month's electricity bill was £1,000, and then on top of that, her neighbour sued her for the pump making so much noise, it was disturbing their sleep.
I mean,
it's disaster.
Dave, we put 22 in a conversion. We had to. The council forced us to have, the pumps, the heat source pumps, which is, am I right in saying it's like air conditioning the other way around?
I suppose, yeah.
If you're as thick as me, is that how you would describe it, Dave?
I wouldn't say as thick as you, John. I'm just saying someone
less technical.
Looked into it as much. Yeah, it's sort of something like that. Yeah.
And I'm having one put in my swimming pool. I'm testing it out, and we're having some solar apparently and some batteries. I don't know if that's any good, is it, Dave?
Right. Yeah. Well, that is the ideal combination. Right. If you've got solar panels, batteries, and the infrared heating, and your property is insulated properly, you can reduce your heating bills by up to 90%.
Amazing.
It is, personally, I think it's the way forward.
I think one of the problems I see coming with this retrospective fitting of insulation and stuff in older properties, it's crazy because, you insulate your roof and your loft space, and all that it does will force everything downstairs and go out through they were saying even if you get into the stage where you've almost got to leave your keys in the keyhole, otherwise, you've got air coming in and out of that sort of source.
I think on brand new properties, Dave, it's the answer is because they're so well insulated. You build them so well now. So that's got to be the answer. But on anything old or listed, listed buildings like mine, you've got no chance.
It's going to be a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. That will be a problem, yeah.
I think the other difficulty with this retrospective business is that where you've got buy-to-let landlords who've got to retrospectively insulate their properties, what do they do with their tenants while this is going on? Are they obliged to find them alternative accommodation, or I don't know? I just see all sorts of problems coming up. And I can see it causing a lot of problem with
EPC's 2025, isn't it? They've got to be C or above.
Yeah,
it's got a long way, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is 2025. What you said there, that will be a real problem, and I can see it getting to a point where you can't remortgage your. Let's say you've got buy-to-let.
Good point. Yeah.
And then it will go further to a point where you just can't get a mortgage on it, and people be stuck with these properties that. It's just not cost effective to insulate. It might cost 20 grand to get them up to standard. But who do you sell them to? If people can't get a mortgage on them,
we'll buy them if they're cheap enough, won't we?
I'm sure you will, John. I'm sure you will.
And how do you recoup your rent that you know?
I think the terrace houses are very vulnerable to this because the value, if you've got a terrace house in the south, you're probably okay to do it because you're going to make that money back. But if you've got all due respect, the terrace house in Barnsley or Stoke or Burnley or somewhere, I'm not being rude, but they might be only worth 70, 80 grand.
Yeah.
So I mean, how the heck can you spend 20 grand? Because it costs similar money to insulate that house as it will one down here. So that's the problem.
I think it will get to the stage. It'll be worth buying houses, just knock them down and build brand new.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? You would, wouldn't it?
Right. Well, on that progressive note, right, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when we'll be asking John and Dave more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm joined today by John Howard and Dave Forde. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, your second question.
Yes.
I'm a small developer in central London and have been advised by a number of agents to market my newly completed apartments in the Asia Pacific areas by way of exhibitions. However, other agents have told me that these markets, I presume they mean sort of Hong Kong, KL and Singapore, have practically dried up due to the negative economic perception of the UK's situation. Do the panel have a view on this?
I do have a view on it, and so does, I hate to say, Keir Starmer of the Labour Party. So I think the viewer is right that certainly the big 3 or 4 places in the UK where the Asians and like to invest: London, Manchester, Birmingham, Cambridge, Oxford. They've heard of those. So that's really important. And they are still investing in some developments, but not at the same level as before. Now, Keir Starmer thinks, because he's going to help first-time buyers, he knows nothing about property. He's only ever bought one house in his life probably. But anyway, that doesn't matter because he's an expert apparently. He's going to suggest that first-time buyers have 6 months forward selling, if you like. So similar to what the selling off plan to the Asian market, the first-time buyers are going to have exclusive 6 months in order to purchase first. Now, you and I know, and Dave knows, that's a load of rubbish and will never work. But that's one of the ideas that Keir Starmer's coming up with to help the housing crisis.
But it's not, because look, I mean, if I was involved in a development just down the road here, right? 70% of that development was sold in the Asia Pacific area, okay? Yeah. And they certainly weren't sold at prices that first-time buyers could afford. So it's just not an applicable comparison, is it?
Not at all. It's total naivety.
I mean, I can think of a particular developer, I'm sure you know who, out sort of Enfield way, head office, used to produce homes for first-time buyers. I mean, frankly, architecturally they were a bit dull.
Yes.
If you'd had a drink and found your way home, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that house and that house or any other house. But they were built at a price that first-timers could afford. Mortgages were readily available for those houses, and we certainly didn't hear all these screams about no stock and no
they served. I mean, let's be honest, they served a purpose.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what we've got to get
foot
back
on
to.
the ladder.
Yeah.
You know, is what people are looking for, a foot on the ladder. But it's all down to you because they're too expensive.
No comment, John.
That's a good construction manager's comment.
Well, that's about right, to be fair. What else can they say?
Yeah.
You know, build costs have gone up, and we're in a very difficult situation at the moment on that side of
But
things.
John, isn't it the case where sort of government tend to look at, you know, one sort of solution fits everything, and it doesn't.
One, it doesn't, but also they're so reactive rather than proactive. I mean, the Help to Buy scheme everyone knocked it like hell, but it helped 600,000-700,000 first-time buyers. Now, you'll argue, I know, because we've had this before, that some of the first-time buyers didn't need the help, and I understand that. But look what's happened since it stopped. Persimmon Homes were building 15,000 houses last year. This year, they're building 9,000. That's the difference, without any Help to Buy.
I mean, again, you know, I don't like the government just assuming that all the areas are the same and the same thing applies right across. I mean, here now, I was just looking the other day, a one-bedroom flat here in a decent block is £800,000. 800,000. How is a young couple starting out on a new marriage, new life, all that, how on earth are they going to even get a mortgage to buy?
But Stephen, I keep telling you, there is life outside London.
I agree.
And outside Canary Wharf.
Yeah, I agree.
Know, you can go up north and buy a very nice one-bedroom flat, not just up north. Most places.
Yeah, but you can't get a job, John. You can't get a job.
For about 110,000. Yes, you can. There's loads of jobs about. If you want to buy a house in the UK or a property in the UK, it's possible on a modest salary. It's possible.
Yes.
It's possible.
But you've got to look at the overall sort of demographics of where you're going, who you're going to be with.
No, Stephen, I disagree. You've worked very, very hard to be able to live and the privilege to live in this area. Okay?
Yeah. All right.
You have done, and you've been very successful. But that's not everyone's right to be able to do that. It's their right to be able to move around and find a property that is adequate as a first-time investment for them, which they can afford. And that is possible for most first-time buyers. That is possible.
John, let me just say, we had a question in a previous programme about whether planning should be reduced in terms of restrictions in the north of England, where land was far more easily available. And I think the overall answer was that, yeah, that's all very well, but the employment statistics don't support high levels of development in certain areas in the north of England. So therefore it's not going to work unless you've got, it's a little bit like the developer who develops in London. I think, crikey, I've just had a look at, I don't know, I don't want to sort of knock anywhere, but I don't know.
Careful. Careful, we've got stuff all over the country.
Yeah, wherever in the north of England. I think, crikey, you know, look, we're at 500,000 in London, and we can go up there and build the same thing for £80,000. But it doesn't work like that.
No, but the government need to help. They need to give government subsidies to companies to move up north, in order for then their staff to move up north and have a much better quality of life than in London. To be quite honest with you. You should try it sometime.
Well, I was brought up in the Midlands, and I much prefer the life in London.
Good answer. Good answer.
I'll tell you. Okay. Well, I don't think we're going to get a clear answer to that one, are we?
I don't think you and I are going to agree on it. That's for sure.
No. All right, Dave. Do the panel think that modular construction techniques will improve the speed and cost of construction in the future? Now, what we do mean by modular, because we had this conversation off camera, I think we're talking here about, you know, the idea of buying preformed bathrooms and kitchens and sort of craning them into buildings and constructing a little bit like a Lego kit, I suppose. That's the simplest way of putting it.
Well, you and I would describe it as that, but I think Dave's a bit more sophisticated than that.
He probably is. What do you think, Dave?
I'm a big fan of modular construction and off-site manufacturing. Not just for the cost. Now, it used to be more expensive than traditional build, but that's come down now. If they are any more expensive, it's no more than 5%. But when you're undertaking a project, you've got to take a holistic view. It's not just how many pounds and pennies am I spending on day one. It's how much risk am I reducing. You know, you can build quicker, you've got less men on site, you're borrowing money for less. The longer your project goes on, the more chance of accidents and quality issues. It's all risk. You take that risk out by having things built off site. It's all quality assured in an environment where they can get to everything. And if you're doing stuff in London, like now there's a lot of people are taking up airspace developments under PD. You can have all that built off site and just craned in one day. You can now get complete loft conversions built off site.
Amazing. Brought
in on a lorry. There's no scaffolding, there's no annoying the neighbours, there's no closing the roads off, there's no 50 delivery lorries coming for over the course of 3 months. It's nothing. It's just you open the roof up, the lorry turns up on the crane, it's up, it's on, make the roof watertight, connect the electrics, good to go. I think it's definitely the way forward.
It makes it sound very easy.
Do you know what? I was just about to say the same thing. Crikey, why aren't we all doing it? Yeah. Crikey, that sounds, I mean, that's amazing. And you, with all your experience, Dave, and you've been at this job a long, long time, and most people of your age, with all due respect, are a bit stick in the mud and don't like new things. Yeah. But you've actually embraced it, which is impressive. And something that I need to embrace, obviously, as well.
Well, John, you know, I've worked in the commercial world for 20 years doing all these office fit outs around Canary. We've been using this stuff for 20 years. Yeah, you know, and it's just now seeping into the residential market.
Yeah.
Why has it taken so much time?
Exactly what John said. The construction industry, just by its nature, is very slow to adopt new techniques. And that comes down to the people, isn't it? People, they work their way up to a certain level, they get a certain wage and a certain lifestyle, and they just want to keep that. They know what they know and they're good at it. When someone comes along and goes, yeah, what we should do is start using this. No, I don't understand it, so I don't want to talk about it. But with the way the government's pushing it, with the net zero, with all the professional institutions in the built environment, the CIOB, REBA, RICS, Institute of Structural Engineers, are all committed to sustainable construction. And this is sustainable because you don't have the waste and you don't have the trips to and from site, which causes carbon emissions. That this is what it's all about, and this is the way it's heading.
But would you say that the 10 big house builders in the UK have not adopted this yet, have they?
Not yet.
And until they do, it's always going to be for the smaller developers, perhaps, potentially, to lead the way, if you like.
Do you need a different set of skilled people to handle this sort of project?
It's made in the factory by people who know how to make it, and they will work with the build team on site and just tell them what they've got to do. It's quite easy to, that's the whole idea, to make it easier, and that feeds into the thing about you need less skilled labour, you need less apprenticeships. It's quick, we get it in, it's done, you know what I mean?
Okay,
great.
Well, that's it. So I'm going to say a big thank you to John Howard and Dave Forde for coming in today and answering our questions. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.